Welcome to our channel, ladies and gentlemen. Kindly consider subscribing to our channel and click the notification bell. The importance of our courts in the Kenyan election can neither be underestimated or overemphasized, as they play a very significant role in the Kenyan elections. You all understand that in every election cycle, there are several interests that play out. One of them, without saying, is the international community. The USA, Britain, and the EU will always want to have someone who will be their puppet, in the sense that they will be getting contract, because Africa has got a lot of resources and they want to exploit the resources. That they can only do that if they have their man or lady at the helm of affairs. And they want contracts such as building of roads and railways, and they want to kick out China from Africa. So in Kenya, as always, they would want to get someone who will listen to them. That is the number one interest that anyone who wants to become the president in Kenya must deal with. Number two are the nation, the citizens themselves. Your policies can attract Kenyans. And in the Kenyan setup, as long as you can hoodwink Kenyans and lie to them, majority will vote for you. Because most Kenyans have not realized that sometimes during elections, politicians will always speak and promise heaven, but they cannot even deliver hell. Someone was telling me so. The other determinant in every presidential election will be the IEBC. Needless to say, this is the team that will guarantee a free, fair, and verifiable election as is mandated by the Constitution. The third one is our courts, because after all is said and done, the courts have got the fate of the nation in their hands. In fact, if you look at Kenya and many African elections, the courts will either decide that people will go to the streets to burn the country to ashes, or they can reinstate order and sanity, because they are the custodian of our laws. They can interpret the laws. In the last elections, the Supreme Court thwarted all the 7 prayers that Azimio had given them, and they used very non-judicial terms, things like hot air, wild goose chase. And many lawyers were asked, and they said that in every contest, if you want to become a neutral arbiter, you must use a language that will be accepted by both the winner and the loser, so that by the end of the day, even the loser will go home saying that at least we had a fair hearing. To date, the Supreme Court head, Madam Martha Koome, is still fighting for her space, because Kenyans had faith in Koome, but they are disappointed in the manner in which Koome and the team handled the presidential petition. Raila Odinga is back on the streets. And if you look at the 5 or 7 irreducible minimums, he wants the server to be opened, the cost of living to come down. He wants the government to meet the medical expenses of those who suffered police brutality during the just concluded demonstrations, among other things. William Ruto is a bit comfortable with certain of those demands, but the one that has become a thorn in the flesh is opening the server. Why? Because the server is like opening a can of worms. It is the elephant in the room. But Raila has insisted that that server must be opened, because I understand that when that server is opened, Raila and the team will advocate for the prosecution of Wafula Chebukati, Boya Mulu, and the team that announced that William Ruto was the winner. But there is one big monster that Raila is not talking about, because this is the opportunity that Raila has to prepare a way for 2027. In fact, many people feel that if Raila will not contest in 2027, then he is like paving a way for Martha Karua, Kalonzo Musyoka, Oparanya, Eugene Wamalwa, Jeremiah Kioni, that team. He wants to leave a very strong team that will be inherited by the Azimio Brigade, because Kalonzo has really shocked many by his bravery. No one ever believed that Kalonzo can brave the tear gas, and has remained steadfast. The other day, the government revealed that they wanted him to become the Minister for Foreign Affairs, but he refused. They have tried looking for him. Martha Karua is tough, and she does not want to listen to anything but opening the server. Jeremiah Kioni is even more annoyed because he says that it was in his backyard where massive election malpractices took place. And of course, people like Oparanya and Eugene Wamalwa have been very loyal to Raila Amolo Odinga. So Raila has a team behind him. But we don't see Raila Amolo Odinga mentioning the courts. As he tries to prepare himself for 2027, he has not touched the courts. He's really interested in the recruitment of the IEBC staff, the commissioners. And I think it is because the Cherera 4 team has gone, is calling for their reinstatement, and Chebukati and the other two have retired. So this is the opportunity, and Raila wants to ensure that there is a very neutral team. But Ngunyi Mutahi, in a tweet that you have all seen, we can just look at it again, was telling Raila that, dear Raila Odinga, you are fighting the wrong battle with IEBC. The enemy of Kenya is the Supreme Court. We have many unanswered questions against their ruling in 2022. The 6 unelected judges made Ruto president. The fact is, the courts are rotten to the core and rotten from the core. So Ngunyi Mutahi is reminding Raila Amolo Odinga that even if you succeed in getting a strong and a neutral team at the IEBC office, the biggest monster that you still have here is the Supreme Court. You see, even today, the courts can either make or break our country. You remember when William Ruto wanted to introduce the LGBTQ+, he went through the back door, through the courts. And the Supreme Court ruled that LGBTQ+ have got a right of association. The GMO was being forced on us. Some people had to run to the courts and it was stopped. When the Commission's Authority Chair, Chiloba, wrote a letter to intimidate the media for airing and showing the covering Azimio rallies, they went to court. So the courts are very important, a very integral part in our day-to-day lives, because if the court is captured, then we are done. But we all know that the court has been captured. So Ngunyi Mutahi is reminding Raila Amolo Odinga that we have seen you talk about the IEBC, but you see, when the IEBC announces a wrong results, then Raila will be forced to go to the courts because he's the one who fought for the new constitution, the 2010 constitution. In the past, people did not have faith in the judiciary, and that's why people went to the streets in 2007, because a presidential case would take up to 2 years. You know, 2 years after elections, a very lengthy time. People have moved on and no one wants even to listen to it. And that is why when we brought in the new constitution, in its promulgation, there were timelines how presidential petition must be covered with timelines. I want to agree with Nguni Mutahi because people will accuse Raila Amolo Odinga that you are the one who fought for this new constitution. You must abide by the ruling of the Supreme Court. That is why in 2013, he said that even though we don't agree with the ruling of the courts, we have to accept. That is a very dangerous term that we now have in Kenya. We don't agree with it, but we must accept because it is the law. And according to the Kenyan law, the Supreme Court is has the final say about the presidential elections. So let's face it, ladies and gentlemen. Do you agree with Nguni Mutahi? Because he's saying that Raila can do anything. He can get the best team at the IEBC level. But if we don't overhaul that IEBC, that court, the Supreme Court, the 7 members, rotten to the core and rotten from the core, then Raila is doing nothing. I want to agree with Nguni Mutahi because many have asked, this is the time when Raila is preparing for 2027. Why isn't he talking about the IEBC? Because this is the time to initiate that debate. Nguni maybe is thinking that in the 7 bipartisan committee, Raila should introduce talking about the IEBC. They should be kicked, the Supreme Court. Those members should be kicked out and we begin afresh. You talk about breaching the constitution. We must sometimes break the constitution to bring the country to order. We cannot have a wrong team in the name of breaching the constitution. Why do we have a team that breaches the constitution, yet we cannot breach a constitution to have a team that will not breach a constitution? And I think this is a wake-up call to Raila Amolo Odinga, that he is fighting a wrong fight. To me, it is not a wrong fight per se. He should include other stakeholders, those whom he knows very well hold the key to a verifiable election. Once he's done with the IEBC, he should now ensure that we have a neutral team in that Supreme Court. And ladies and gentlemen, I fully agree with the sentiments of Nguni Mutahi. And I know you will also agree with Nguni Mutahi that Raila Amolo Odinga must know how to handle the IEBC, must know how to handle the international community, must know how to handle our courts. Is our court compromisable? Can they be bought? Is the IEBC compromisable? Can they be bought? There has been a big question that why couldn't Raila just decide to take money to the IEBC and take some money to the Supreme Court so that they could rule in his favor? Is that the country that we want? Because Raila wants a country where tomorrow the younger generation can go to the polls without any fear that you must use money to ascend to power. I don't know what you think, but ladies and gentlemen, if there is one tweet that I agree with, it is this one of Nguni Mutahi. I don't know what you think, but this is my take.